Hello, welcome to Live with Anton Gunn. I'm so excited about being with you because I want to continue on the theme that I started last week about workplace injustice. Now, before I get deep into this content, I want to let you know a couple new things that's going on with me. Everybody should go and check out antongunn.com. I got a new homepage. There's a lot of great stuff on there for you and for all of the leaders in which you work. So I wanted to give you a quick shout out, a quick plug to check out the new home of antongunn.com. Give me some feedback. I got courses there. I got free resources there, my books, and I got a store where you can get some Anton Gunn merch. Again, antongunn.com. Check it all out. Give me your feedback. Let me know what you think. Okay, now that I got that out of the way, let me talk to the real leaders in the room. Let me talk to the people who get the big bucks because they're in executive leadership role. Now, I know you thought when you were hired, that the job was all about performance. It was all about productivity. It was all about outcomes. It's all about revenue generation. It's around profitability for the company, that's what the job is. But I want you to know, if you come into an organization in a senior leadership role, or if you've been in that senior leadership role for a long time, and the only thing you think about is profitability and your KPIs, I want you to understand something, that you're failing as a leader. You're failing as a leader because you are missing the most important ingredient, if you will. And that is the organizations that are the highest performing in every industry, the ones who outperform their competition, the ones who build the kind of machine and brand that we all admire. These are the organizations whose leaders recognize that they have an additional responsibility other than the bottom line KPIs. And that responsibility is around building a world-class culture where your team thrives. Now, here are the characteristics of an organization with a world-class culture. Number one, the leaders in that organization, that means you, the leaders have become people that we all will admire, that they become the leader that everybody values and sees as one of the most honorable people there is on the planet Earth. Well, you don't become one of the most honorable people just because you focus on profitability and productivity and bottom line KPIs. You become one of the most admired leaders because you build a culture where everybody feels valued, respected, included, invisible, and most importantly, they feel that their culture is fair. Another word for fairness is justice. And so the biggest problem is that many leaders have taken on one leadership imperative, but not the leadership imperative. And I want to lay out for you that the leadership imperative of the 21st century, and matter of fact, let's be clear. Let's just say it like this. The leadership imperative for you in 2024 is to conquer the injustice that exists in your workplace. Now, when I say injustice in your workplace, I want to give it to you in some of the dimensions that we know. We know about sexual harassment. We know about bullying. We know about physical violence in the workplace. We've seen those injustices over and over again. But sometimes we forget about the subtle ones, like the ostracism or the microaggressions or the implicit bias that exists. There are all kinds of injustices that exist in the workplace. Matter of fact, in a research report that I'm going to release very, very soon, I talk about the 8 domains of injustice. They exist, they're real. So your first imperative as a leader, if you want to conquer the workplace injustice that exists, you got to see the injustice. You can't fix what you don't see. You can't correct what you don't understand. You can't come around on things that you don't know. So you have to see it first. And the problem is In my research, so many leaders either don't know, don't see, or don't care about the injustice that are happening in their workplace. Some of them are just blind to it. Like, you might not even notice that you only have 10% of women in any leadership role. You might not even notice that you don't have any people of color above a manager level. You might not notice that young people continue to leave your organization after 2 years, that you have a churn and burn culture when it comes to young people. You may not even see it. So it's an imperative that you learn how to see the injustices that exist, that you got to know what they are, what they look like inside of your organization, and call them out. You got to help other people to see it because it's there. I'm confident that there's somebody in your organization who feels like they're being treated unfair. I don't care how many good place to work awards you win. You can win them for the rest of your life. But I know somebody that works in the parking lot or the warehouse or in that small office that feels like it's unfair. It's real. Your job is to see it. That's the first imperative to conquer injustice. Now, the second imperative to conquer injustice is this, that once you see it, you need to then set the precedent that you will not tolerate it, that you will not tolerate injustice. Now, not tolerating it, let me give you some framework of what not tolerating it means. Not tolerating means not being afraid to have the uncomfortable conversation of where you see injustice. See, like some organizations don't want to have the uncomfortable conversation that for the past 25 years, if you are a minority executive, you've been probably getting paid 35 to 40% less than your peers in the same organization because of implicit bias and inequities and your starting salary versus other people's starting salary. I think I told y'all before that I was in an executive role one time. I was treated as a senior leader. I'm sitting around the table doing what everybody else does. But I would later learn that I was making 37% less than people who were my peers at the same level of the organization. So when you become aware of these level of injustices, you got to start to talk about it. It's an uncomfortable conversation when you start talking to a person about the salary inequities that you have. It's an uncomfortable conversation when you talk about how we treat different communities differently that we have business in. That if you own a restaurant on this side of town and you own another one on this side of town, why you don't invest in training in the first one, but you invest in the second one because of the zip code and who lives in that zip code. So you got to have uncomfortable conversations. Is how you begin to let people know that you're not going to tolerate injustice. See, if you were tolerating it, you would see what's wrong, but not say anything. But the best leaders are the ones who get comfortable having uncomfortable conversations. The second thing to not tolerate it is a part of the conversation. Is as much you start talking about the injustice, you got to listen to the perspective of people who have been experiencing the injustices. It doesn't matter who they are. This ain't always about race. This might be people who don't have certain degrees. This might be people who literally work in a warehouse or a frontline team member, an individual contributor, that you need to listen to those people around what they feel is not fair. That's the reason why we got organized labor strikes happening all over the country, is because leadership stopped listening to frontline team members about what they deem as unfair. Even an actor strike, actors think it's unfair that they can do work one time and you make billions of dollars off of it and they make peanuts off of it. Or you can take their image and their likeness and create new content using artificial intelligence and they not be compensated for it. That's unfair. So when you stop listening, people get angry enough to go on strike. When you stop listening, people will cost you money because they feel like they're not being treated fair. So you got to learn to listen. And a part of that listening process involves you getting some education. Now, when I say education, if you want to not tolerate injustice, educate yourself on all of the ways injustice can show up in your workplace and the experiences that people are having. So what am I telling you to do? To tune in to everything that I'm sharing on this platform every time that I share it, because I'm going to educate you. If nothing else, you're going to get free game from me. I can't sit idly by and let you make a bad decision as a leader. You're going to get free game from me. So if you want to educate yourself, then you need to make your way over to antongunn.com. You need to make sure that you check out my leadership tools, you check out my free resources, that you check out my courses, that you check out my coaching program. Check out everything that I got. Find what's for you and take advantage of it. That's your best bet. I'm just telling you right now, educate yourself. You cannot tolerate injustice, and the only way to not tolerate it is to educate yourself about it, listen to people who've experienced it, and most importantly, have uncomfortable conversations. Now, the last thing I'm going to tell you about not tolerating it, this comes from one of the most inclusive organizations in the National Football League. It comes from the Pittsburgh Steelers, who has been a champion for diversity and inclusion for a long time in the NFL. I mean, like a long time, more than I can count. Who's had an African-American head coach for a very long time. His name is Mike Tomlin. And Mike Tomlin has this phrase that sounds funny when I say it, but I'm going to explain it. Mike Tomlin says, the standard is the standard. And I'm telling you as a leader, you have to set the standard in your organization about the intolerance of injustice. As a matter of fact, the only thing that you shouldn't tolerate in an organization is injustice. You should tolerate diversity, include people, et cetera, et cetera. But the standard needs to be injustice. And I'm going to come back and close what I mean by setting the standard. Now, the third thing I want to lay out for you, I had a thing in my eye. The third thing that I want to lay out as a leadership imperative for you around the concept of conquering workplace injustice is you need to redefine your culture. You're the leader. You got a culture. Your culture evolves every time you add in new people, every time you remove people. Your culture will always continue to evolve. But you as a leader, as long as you're there, it's your job to set the standard, set the framework, and redefine the culture. And when I say redefine the culture, is to be okay with saying, thinking, doing, and implementing that we value diversity in this organization. We value it up at the top. We value it in the middle. We value it at the bottom. We value the diversity of perspective, opinion, and insights from our employees, our customers, and our stakeholders. You got to appreciate diversity, not see it as a feel-good thing or a nice thing to do, but you have to see it as a business imperative. That if we're going to be successful as a brand and as a company, we have to recognize that diversity is what's going to win for us. It's our competitive advantage. It is what is going to make us win. I've said this like 100 times before, so this shouldn't be new information to you, but I'm saying it to you again, that the companies who have diversity in their senior leadership roles and on their boards make more money than their competitors, significantly more money. The companies who value diversity win. So you need to redefine your culture that you appreciate diversity, that you value diversity, that you want diversity, that you are diversity, that you're the definition of diversity. Again, that's why I say redefine the culture. The second thing is a part of bringing in diversity is acknowledging that you have some unconscious bias. That's why you don't have as much diversity as you should have. Or when you did have it, you didn't sustain it because you have some biases in your organization with how you do things, how you treat people, how you engage with people. And many of those biases are unconscious. You don't even know you're doing it. So, what do you need if you want to redefine culture? You need training on how to recognize unconscious bias. You need training on how to develop policies, procedures, practices to mitigate the bias inside of your organization. You need that. You need that development. I can help you with it if you want it, but it doesn't have to be me. It can be anybody. I know a lot of people who can help you in that space, but you really need to do some work of making sure that you mitigate the implicit or unconscious bias that exists in your organization. The third thing you can do to redefine culture, the C principle, ABC principle of how you redefine the culture is around transparency. You got to be more transparent as a leader. I'm going to tell you this. I was on a call with a client early this morning preparing for a keynote speech that I have coming up later in November. And so the CEO jumped on the call. He wanted to talk about my content, and we were having a great conversation around what I plan to teach his leaders for them to continue to be unique and united in their purpose and their vision and goal. And we got on the subject of the problems that his organization might be having. So I asked him, are there any things I don't need to talk about? Any things I should steer clear of because it's a sticky subject? And this leader says something profound. It shows me why he has such a great culture in the organization. This CEO said to me, he says, Anton, this might eventually get me fired one day, but I'm the most transparent with my team. There's nothing that they don't know. I talk to them about everything, every problem we have, every struggle we have, and maybe I'm too transparent and I might end up losing my job because I tell them too much. I want them to know what's going on. And I told him, I said, if you have a culture that is full of transparency, you're going to build an organization full of trust. And so I'm telling you right now, if you want to redefine your culture, you got to redefine it to be grounded in trust. And you can't get that trust without transparency. So be transparent. So another way you can redefine the culture, the next step, if you want to redefine the culture, is really around accountability. Accountability. And when I say accountability, I'm talking about holding people accountable to the values that you set. So again, when I say don't tolerate it, if somebody commits some act of injustice or unfairness in your organization, hold them accountable. Hold them accountable. Have an accountability framework and accountability process that you know whether they did it on purpose or they did it by accident. Did they know what they were doing was wrong? And if they knew what they were doing was wrong, was there a good reason for them to do it? And if there are not good answers to those questions, then that's when you hold them accountable. You hold them accountable. Sometimes that might mean terminating people, but it don't always have to be. But you got to have that accountability inside your organization. And the last piece, if you want to redefine culture, again, this is point number 3 on your imperative to conquer workplace injustice, is that you have to be inclusive as a leader. Build an inclusionary culture in your organization. Respect people, value them, empower them, include them. That is what you must do. You have to do that. If you want to redefine the culture, it has to be a foundation where everybody, regardless of their role, regardless of their position, they feel empowered to speak up. They're invited in the room to have the conversation. You can't be just a top-down leader who only talk to the people in the ivory tower and never talk to the people on the front lines. You got to get low. And that's my Lil John voice. Get low. Talk to the people on the ground. Meet them where they are. That's your responsibility as a leader. Now, the fourth thing that I'm closing with, as we talk about how can you confront, conquer workplace injustice. This is your imperative. The bottom line, the last thing you got to do is if you're going to conquer it, you got to be fearless. You got to be fearless. Now, fearlessness is something that most of us don't have. We lack courage. Fearlessness is, it's called fearless. Maybe you should call it courage more. But my opinion is the greatest leaders are the ones who are afraid, but they do it anyway. And so you need to be fearless in ending injustice in the workplace. You need to be fearless in seeing it, fearless and not tolerating it, fearless in redefining your culture, and fearless in ending it. And it really starts with you saying one sentence: I will not tolerate injustice on my watch. Say it with me. I'm going to repeat it. I want you to say it to yourself. I will not tolerate injustice on my watch. I will not tolerate injustice on my watch. If you get that clear in your mind, in your head, that you don't tolerate it on your watch, there's no reason you can't be full of courage or fearless when it comes to confronting and conquering injustice. So I hope this added value to you. I hope I said something that made sense. I hope you become a better leader, because you need to be the leader that everybody will admire. And I'm telling you, if you see injustice, you stop tolerating it, you to refine the culture and develop a fearlessness as it relates to these kinds of difficult issues, you will become the leader that everyone will admire. It will be you. And you will build a culture where nobody ever wants to quit. They don't want to leave you. They don't want to leave the team. They don't want to leave the mission, the vision. They're bought in. They're committed to it. All because you accepted this leadership imperative. So I want to thank you for watching. Have a fantastic day, and I'll see you